Hi, I'm Laurie Penny with Paulding.com, and I wanted to introduce my friend Jamie Gilbert. He is the head of economic development in Paulding County. A lot of the people in the county work outside the county, so they haven't had the opportunity to meet Jamie. Jamie is a very inspiring person. I have been a business owner here in Paulding for 15 years. And I've gotten to know Jamie, and Jamie's been able to explain to me how economic development can help a small business. In fact, Jamie has kind of mentored me in trying to understand where my small business fits into the economy of Paulding and the direction that he is taking us that will help the small business owner here in the county. So, Jamie, like I asked you the first time I met you, why does a community need economic development? Why can't this just evolve per se the way it has done over the last few years? Explain a little bit about what it is.
I think economic development covers so many different areas. It's working with our elected officials to make sure that the business climate is appropriate here. But more than that, it's that the competition for business is so intense across the country and within the state of Georgia that if you do not have a program in place to address the needs of business, you will lose out on the projects that are out there that are looking. There has to be a single point of contact to work a project from the early stages where they express interest in a community to getting everything in place to make that project work within the county. So there's so many facets involved that if a county does not have a program in place, the projects will not come here. And that's what we saw for many, many years in Paulding County, is that the counties surrounding us that are in our labor market have benefited greatly from having an economic development program in place. Just look at Douglas, Carroll County, and even Polk County, for example. If you look at our numbers here, and I want to talk about industrial and manufacturing in particular, we are so far behind the other communities, and a lot of that is attributable directly to the fact that we did not focus on business recruitment, retention, and expansion. It has hurt us, and quite frankly, when you look at numbers in terms of the impact on the economy, if you look at what industry generates in terms of revenue and compare it to what they actually take out in the form of county services or city services, basically for every dollar that they bring in terms of tax revenue, they demand somewhere around 30 or 40 cents in services. So it's a money generator for the community. If you look at residential development, which is what Paulding County was for so many years, for every dollar that a residential home generates, unless it's a home that's of extraordinarily high value, meaning $500,000 homes, that's the exception. We don't have a whole lot of those, but when you look at residential, for every dollar that you bring in tax revenue between the schools and county services, you are losing money each time. You can't survive as a community without businesses.
Well, I have a question for you because as a resident, I have a home here. I'm part of the building boom that we had.
Right.
I just love 278 with all of the stores and the different restaurants and stuff. Now, that's economic development. We have a lot of that here.
Yes.
Why isn't that? Why aren't we going to just concentrate on building that? I mean, that's worked well for us. Can't we build more of that to boost the local economy?
Well, you're talking about retail.
Yes.
And you reach a point with retail where there just is not enough demand in the market to support more and more retail. I don't think we've quite reached that yet. I still think there's room for retail growth here in Paulding County. But you need to have people to support retail. And one of the ways that we can help our retail businesses that are here and even see some new ones come in is by creating jobs. Think about this. Right now, Paulding County has one of the highest percentages of employed residents that leave the county each day to work. It's about 76%. When those people leave Paulding County, whether they're going to Cobb or Fulton or Douglas County, there's a good chance that the gas that they buy, the food that they buy for lunch, those expenses are happening in another county. So we're not getting the sales tax revenue from the expenses that they're making. When you have businesses here and they bring in customers or clients, they take them out to have lunch. That's more revenue that we get.
Right.
So in order to have a healthy retail environment,
Right.
you need to have jobs. And those jobs, not only do the employees make those purchases, but the companies do as well.
Right. And so when we're talking about the various types of economic development, so we're talking about manufacturing, we talk about aviation, we talk about the movie studio that we have. When you look at Paulding and you see how dense 278 is with retail, and you see how dense the housing market is, where do we put industrial jobs? These are huge buildings. They require a lot of infrastructure. What do we have to offer these people? I mean, why would you come? Why would you bring that to Paulding County? What do we have that nobody else has?
Well, what we have in Paulding County is a great quality of life and a very skilled workforce. Okay, there is a reason why Paulding County was the second fastest growing county in Georgia from 2000 to 2010.
Right.
This was a desirable community of subdivisions,
Right.
of retail, the things that you mentioned. The costs of being here in terms of taxes were lower than many other areas. So we had all the right things in place for people to want to come here. Well, the reasons why people moved here in the first place are the same reasons why businesses will find Paulding County attractive. Affordable business costs in terms of taxes, a skilled workforce, and that's one thing that I also want to talk about. When it comes to companies looking at Paulding County, I mentioned a second ago that 76% of the residents that leave the county each day. Do you know that in Paulding County, of our employed residents, there are 4,000 that are employed in manufacturing, but there are only 900 manufacturing jobs in Paulding County. So what that means is if you were to, let's just assume that 500 of those 900 jobs are held by Paulding County residents. That means there are over 3,500 people that are employed in manufacturing leaving this county each day. We have one of the largest or the highest commute times in the state as well at about 32 minutes. So when we talk to businesses about coming to Paulding County, what we're able to show them is that we have a very skilled workforce. You have companies that want to pay salaries that are considerably higher than the average salaries here in Paulding.
Right.
So they see with rising gas prices and people putting more emphasis on quality time with their families, that a lot of those folks that are leaving the county each day would be much more inclined to stay home and work for a business here than to have to leave the county each day.
So what I see is a common theme with everything to do with economic development, and we are funneling all of these ideas, all of these efforts into one single thing, and that would be job creation. It's not about it's the number one priority is not especially collecting more taxes at this point. What we have to do is to bring the companies here, to bring the jobs here. So we know that the state has some incentives for companies to come and provide those jobs. Now they have some requirements that we have to do, right? They don't just hand it to us. We have to meet the requirements that the state asks to fulfill these things. Right. But ultimately, what happens when we do take advantage of these, as far as we know that there's an opportunity zone, and people don't really understand about opportunity zones, and they don't understand about tax abatements, and what the absolute goal of these two things is, and that goal is first and foremost jobs.
Jobs is the number one goal, but I will say generating at some point tax revenue from these projects is extremely important to us and to the school district.
But unless you provide jobs, these incentives are not available to you. No tax breaks. That is the priority, is to create jobs, right?
Let's talk a little bit about tax abatements, and then we'll talk a little bit about the opportunity zone.
Okay.
Tax abatements is a policy that is followed by almost every community in the state of Georgia. I mentioned earlier that the competition for projects is extremely intense. Every community is willing to give tax abatements to some extent. Okay, tax abatements means your real and your personal property. Real property are your buildings and land, your personal property for a company is your equipment.
Okay.
Okay. So what we look at is a number of factors, and we actually take care of existing industry pretty well in deciding whether tax abatements should be offered to a company. What we look at for a new company, and then I'll talk about existing. On a new company, we really look at 3 sets of criteria. How many new jobs are they bringing
Right.
in? What are the wage rates for those
Right.
jobs? And what is their investment in the real and the personal property? And from there, we have different areas that we look at, or I wouldn't say areas, but there's ranges based on the jobs and the salaries. And so when you take a look at that, you end up coming up with adding up some numbers, calculating
Right.
them, and then you end up determining, hey, this project, would be eligible for this type of abatement. Okay?
Right.
And then we take a look at running the numbers, and we know what the impact is going to be. Okay.
Now, let me stop you right there. As a small business in Paulding, you bring in a large company that qualifies for this type of abatement.
Yes.
When we're looking at jobs, we're not going to take just anybody. As a small business owner who's paying my regular taxes like I always have, how does that benefit me when you give these things to a large company? What does that do for me as the small? I mean,
Well,
I don't have a lot of employees, and I fluctuate on my income. So I've been here. I have invested in this county. I have built a business, and you're going to bring in some giant business and give them all the breaks.
Well,
So what's in it for me?
First of all, let me go back because I didn't finish the one
Okay.
point about existing industry and tax abatements. When I got to Georgia 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked at what Douglas County and the city of Douglasville had, which is where I was before coming to Paulding,
Right.
I realized that the tax abatement policy and guidelines that they used really did nothing for existing industry. We know how intense competition is
Right.
among business and the need to compete not only with businesses here in the state of Georgia and around the country, but around the world. And so if you had an existing industry, and let's take a manufacturer, for example, that had to buy new equipment for their operation, and they weren't going to hire anybody in terms of new jobs, but they had to make that investment in order to be more competitive, they were out of luck because they were not creating new jobs. And so what we do in Paulding County, and I did this in Douglasville, and I've actually made it more aggressive here in Paulding, is we said, okay, in the new job category, there aren't any new jobs being created through this project, but we will give a company credit for 50% of their current employment. So a company that has 100 employees gets credit for 50 jobs. They count as 50 new, and that goes into the formula. So now they're eligible to receive a tax abatement for their investment, which they normally would not have gotten
Right.
in other communities. So we're trying to do what we can to take care of the existing industry
Right.
here and allow them to receive the benefits that a new company would also receive. The other thing that I want to clarify is that we do not give tax abatements to projects that are going to compete with existing businesses here in Paulding. So I'll give an example. If I had a company that made packaging materials,
Okay.
and they competed with Cadillac Products here in Dallas that has 45 employees, we would not be giving those types of companies a tax abatement because it would be directly competing with our existing businesses. Now, let's look down the road, and let's take the airport, for example, and we're going after maintenance, repair, and overhaul operations. If I get an MRO, that's the abbreviation for it, to locate to Paulding, and I provide a tax abatement incentive
Right.
for them to come here, and a year later I have a different MRO that may actually be competing with them to some
Yes.
extent, I am going to offer that company a tax abatement. And the reason being is that the new company that came in received that benefit. But we're not going to incentivize a new company coming in that competes directly with one of our existing employers. So let me make that
Okay.
clear. Now, you asked me, what is the benefit to existing industry? Well, what you'll learn when you talk about manufacturing is there is a concept that is called the multiplier effect.
Right.
Okay? And this goes back to when you talk about retail too. You do not have a multiplier effect in retail. Retail primarily is exchanging money within the community from one business to another.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
The multiplier effect in industrial and in manufacturing says that for every one job that gets created by a manufacturer coming in, you can count on 4 or 5 new jobs to be created as a result of that. Now, the key is to make sure those new jobs are actually getting created in your community. I'm going to give an example of a small manufacturer that when you talk about, what they do,
Right.
okay, how they are creating new jobs in other sectors. There's a company down in south of Hiram off of Highway 92 called Capture. Now, Capture makes they make equipment and they make the guns for tranquilizers for animal control, for wildlife management and things like that. Now
Okay.
they have I believe it's 10 employees. I was out there last week. And as I was walking through their facility and looking at what they are doing in terms of manufacturing these tranquilizer guns,
Right.
there are plastic products being bought from companies in Carroll County. There's companies over in Cobb County that they're buying from. They are helping to support those other businesses. Now, that's not even taking into account the retailers that they're utilizing and services they're utilizing here in Paulding County.
And even their employees are spending,
Right.
are able to spend money in the retail and service sector here in the county. So they also benefit. So there's a
Absolutely.
big, every employee benefits.
Absolutely, they're buying those local services.
Yes.
That is why it's extremely important. When you have a company, for instance, one of the projects we're working on, the company will have 70 jobs, 70 employees
Okay.
at their facility. The payroll is going to be over $2 million. That money is going to get spent here. Locally, and then they will also be they'll be contracting out with companies here for services.
Yeah.
Again, what I mentioned earlier, they'll be going to our restaurants. There's a huge impact that results from those companies being
And
here.
also, they'll be buying homes. They will be maintaining those homes, which there's a whole service industry that helps with maintenance of those homes. And they're going to pay taxes
Absolutely.
to our schools.
And understand this, when we talk about the tax abatements too, it's very, very simple to understand. If you don't provide the tax abatements, you're not going to get the jobs, and you're not going to get the investment. It is a short-term offset of all the tax revenue to be able to get those companies coming in, paying some taxes, and providing the overall economic impact that are being made from the
And
jobs.
it is short-term. They don't get to, this is not,
It's
that
not
you get
unlimited.
this forever and
No.
the county benefits.
If you say a company gets a 70%, 80% abatement, okay, on a project, then and they're not here now, and the property is not generating any tax revenue at the present time. Meaning,
Right.
let's say it's an industrial building authority owned site.
Okay.
It's generating $0, okay,
Right.
at this present time. So the rule is simple. You can either get 30% of something, or you can get 100% of nothing. If you don't get the projects here, there is no tax revenue to draw from. And in a lot of cases, it's not a standard tax abatement across the board, meaning it's the same
Right.
every year. For special projects, it will be. But see, we have the ability,
Expansion, special projects would be expansion,
or,
right?
or a new company that's going to make a significant impact on the community.
Right.
So, but we have the ability to look at a project and say we either have a declining amount, or we upfront, or we have a set amount for so many years. But with what we use as our guidelines, and this is not a policy. This is just guidelines that we look at. We have the ability to say, hey, for this project, because of the cash investment the company's going to make, they're going to need to recover some of that money more in the early years. And so maybe instead of it being an 8-year tax abatement, maybe it's just for 4 and it's higher on the first 4, but in year 5 they're paying full taxes. So we have the ability to be flexible, which works well with companies.
To make this in really simple terms, is that economic development is very, very concerned about a company's ability to grow.
Well, and I think
And that's
that also leads to another point. When a tax abatement is put in place for a company, we have what are called clawback provisions. So a company has to guarantee that they are going to create a certain number of jobs, and they are held to that number. If they fail to create the number that they promised, then the tax abatement can be reduced. And then we have another number that we use that if they don't create the minimum, there's one number that can reduce it.
Right.
There's another number that can completely terminate that agreement. So
Right.
we have the ability to then put them back to paying full taxes. But I want to point out something, and you hear this about, well, why do big businesses get tax abatements and small businesses do not? The answer is very simple, and it's because the state of Georgia has set up in its the policy, or not the policy, but state law requires that a tax abatement be processed through what's called a bond for title transaction. Okay, there are no bonds ever really issued in this, but the process requires that a development authority or an industrial building authority own the property while the tax abatement is in place. And it's what they call phantom bonds. Again, they're not real bonds, but bonds on paper are issued. The company buys the bonds. The proceeds are then from the bond that they get are given to the industrial building authority, which then buys the equipment. The equipment is then leased to the company, and then there's lease payments that they're making go to service the debt on these bonds that really don't exist.
Right.
It's a very convoluted, complicated process that the state of Georgia, not Paulding County, has put in place.
But basically,
here's
it works as a guarantee, though,
well, there
to some extent.
not really.
Okay.
Not really. What my point of get to why a larger business is going to be able to do this rather than a small company.
Right.
And that is, in this process, there are legal fees that have to be paid to do this bond for title transaction. And the average cost of a project is somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 in legal fees. Paulding County, the Economic Development Office, the IBA, we do not pay those legal fees. The legal fees are paid by the company receiving the tax abatement. Okay? So
Okay.
let's say you are a small business,
Right.
and let's say you're going to invest $500,000 in property,
Right.
real and personal property. If you calculate the numbers, do 500,000,
Right.
40% assessment means it's $200,000 in value. Now let's do the millage, which is 33 mills. What's that? That comes out to basically you're looking at $6,000 a year.
Yes.
Roughly.
Yes.
So in order, even if you were giving 100% abatement, which we don't do,
Right.
if you were giving 100% abatement for a project for 5 years on $6,000,
Right.
that would be $30,000 in tax savings. The company would have just paid $60,000 in legal fees. They're out $30,000.
Yeah,
money
it
losing.
doesn't benefit
This is
them.
not our policy. This is
The
what the state
state
of Georgia
policy.
has. The legal fees are what they are. We don't pay them. The company pays them. Most small businesses are not going to have the investment to generate the tax abatement. I always say there's a rule, and that's pretty much that a project to qualify for a tax abatement really needs to be around $2 million in investment.
Right.
Now, that sounds big, but it's not because we don't want to do it. It's because the legal fees are so high that the tax savings do not offset them.
But now that's something that we're talking about big businesses there, and we want those big businesses. But I understand that the state has created something else, which is called an opportunity zone, that a business of almost any size can go in there and get tax breaks. It's zone though. It's a zone. There, you know, we've got land marked out, and your business has to be in this zone. I would assume that if we're looking at, if we mark this zone out, that probably it would be pretty good. We would mark a zone that had good sewer, good water, good roads, good sites to build on, and we would put our opportunity zone there, which is kind of,
Well, yes and no. We don't control the area that's eligible for the opportunity zone in the sense that in order to create an opportunity zone, it's a state program, as you mentioned.
exactly.
And there's 2 steps to getting that opportunity zone. The first step is that a county or a city has to set up what's called an urban redevelopment area. And the urban redevelopment area is based on poverty rates and unemployment rates in census tracts. So
Okay.
you have to have a census tract, and I'll just to simplify this, you're really looking at census tracts that have 15% or greater poverty.
Okay.
And then every census tract that touches that high poverty tract is eligible to be in an urban redevelopment area.
Okay.
So you go ahead and you create your urban redevelopment area. And within that urban redevelopment area, you are then able to create an opportunity zone which provides tremendous state tax incentives for companies. Now, you have to understand that the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, which administers this program, is very particular about which properties can be brought in. They do like existing buildings that are deteriorating or obsolete or that need some assistance in terms of being renovated. They like properties in which they're challenged by to some extent, like for instance, did they used to be a junkyard? Are they a brownfield site? That they have some challenges with them. Maybe infrastructure was put into the site and for 5 or 6 years, nothing has happened with it.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's not all about great properties on wonderful roads when you don't have a
Okay.
sort of location and you need to get
Okay.
infrastructure to it, and that's needed in order to make that property a viable site. Then that helps in terms of the assessment. But
Okay.
DCA makes the call in terms of what properties are included. Now, we could have sat here as a community and said, well, we just created this urban redevelopment area, which we did with the
Right.
city of Dallas and Paulding County. And what we decided is the urban redevelopment area should probably be somewhere around 1 mile north and 1 mile south of the 278 corridor.
Okay.
We do go up Highway 61 and out to the industrial north area
Yes.
and pick up there because there's a high concentration of not only industry but available buildings out
Right.
there. So they like vacant buildings also.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
we have a lot of those, Jamie.
we do, and that's one of our challenges
So
is
it's a
that
fire sale on vacant commercial buildings in Paulding. I like.
well, it's designed to help fill that space.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we need some help with those properties because
Right.
most of them are very small buildings.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the most modern buildings around.
Right.
And they have a lot of challenges in terms of work that's needed in them.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense to have an incentive that can help a company come in there.
Right.
But if we had sat there and said, okay, we're going to make the whole urban redevelopment area in Paulding County an opportunity zone, it would have been sent back to us and rejected.
Yeah.
Because they don't want all that land, they don't want all those properties. So, when we submitted the application, we've had DCA, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, out here several times to tour the community, to take pictures of it, to document the properties, and then they made the decision of which properties would be included in the initial round. Now, we have the ability to go back, and we're doing this right now, to say, hey, we would like to have this property that you did not include in the zone, and here's why. And we also, if there's properties that were not originally part of the application, we're able to say, we think these need to be in here for these reasons. Now, the reason we went and decided to create an opportunity zone is because, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of companies are not going to get the tax abatements
Right.
because of those legal requirements and the costs that's associated with them. But the opportunity zone is an incentive that almost every business can take advantage of. And the reason being is that, outside of an opportunity zone, in order to get what are called Georgia job tax credits, you have to primarily be a manufacturer or technology type of company, or an office administrative, something that's a headquarters facility, okay? Retailers, commercial businesses are not eligible. Once you create that opportunity zone, any legal business can receive these job tax credits, okay? Now, what's important is to understand that there are certain things now that change the benefits, okay? If I'm outside of an opportunity zone, I would have to create 15 new jobs to qualify for the job tax credits,
Right.
and the amount would be $1,750 per new job that I would earn for 5 years. But I could only use those credits against 50% of my annual state corporate income tax.
Okay.
Now, whatever's left, I can carry forward for 10 years and use towards future corporate income tax liability at 50%. Okay? Now, if I'm in the zone, instead of having to create 15 new jobs, I only have to create 2. Instead of getting $1,750 per job, it's now doubled to $3,500 per job.
So what do you think the odds are if a company had 2 employees and they got this huge tax break? Do you think they would use that tax break to hire more employees?
Well, they have
to grow the business. I mean, are we giving them that in
well,
this? Is
well,
the
remember,
goal?
well, they have to create the 2 new jobs, so they're already hiring new employees. Now, just to go back to the incentive itself and why this is so important for small business. Okay. Remember, I said you could use that tax credit outside the zone for 50% of your corporate income tax, your state,
Yes.
and then you were done. Okay. Well, inside that zone, you can use it for 100% of your state corporate income tax, and whatever is left can then go towards payroll withholding taxes for those jobs.
100%, Jamie.
Right.
So the small businesses like me in our community can go in there and take advantage of
Let's
that.
say you hire 2 employees and you're in that zone. Now you're earning $7,000 a year for 5 years. You just have gotten $35,000 to offset your Georgia corporate income tax and your Georgia payroll withholding taxes. And if you don't use that, you still have a carry forward of 10 years to use for future corporate income tax liability, not for the withholding, but for future corporate income tax liability. That is a huge incentive.
I'm small business.
Now,
And that is huge. I mean, I get the big houses, like, oh, think of all the things, you're taking the risk and growing with that kind of burden off your back is just, my eyes light up. I get a little excited.
Well, Lori,
I love to see businesses grow, and as little businesses, we don't get a lot of opportunity.
Well, what that does, I think you hit it on a little bit, and that is, if I'm saving $7,000 a year. Maybe that's more equipment I buy for my business. Maybe it's a third person that I hire now that I wouldn't have hired before. So it has a ripple effect across the business. But what we like about this, and you'll see this on our literature, the opportunity zone is for small, it's for large, it's for existing, and it's for new businesses. All they have to do is create those 2 jobs. 2 things that I want to point out about those jobs: they do have to be, there's a minimum wage rate of $10.88 an hour, so you do have to pay that. Anything above that, you're fine, but it's got to be $10.88 an hour. And the second thing is you don't have to provide health insurance in terms of paying for it, but you have to offer it as a benefit. So if you go out and you talk to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and they say it's going to be $500 per employee, as long as you offer that, the employee has the ability to buy it, You don't have to pay for it, but you have to offer that. Those are the only two rule stipulations.
That is fantastic. And I had something else I wanted to point out. When I first heard of all of these things and didn't understand how they worked, I went to Jamie. I said, Jamie, well, what is this? And he sends me like a PDF or sends me to this article to read it. And I'm like, Jamie, whoa, Jamie.
You're talking about the bond for title
Yes.
transaction, of how these phantom bonds work, and it goes money, which is never real money, it gets exchanged.
But I got to tell you about the epiphany that I had. Is that most of us small business owners, we've always got our nose to the grindstone most of the time, and your ability to go to the state, to learn how these things work, to bring them back to us, interpret them properly, and to make sure that the requirements are met is huge. This is not something that even a lot of medium business owners do, is to go to the state website and start looking at, okay, can I get something here? Can I get a break? So you're just invaluable to this community, whether you employ 2 people in a little real estate office or you've got 500 employees. You are always just right on top of anything, any little thing that will help this business community grow. And it just blows my mind to see someone like you, and you're so enthusiastic. You're like, here, I understand this, Mr. Business. Let me help you. Let me show you this. I can see you, Jamie, sitting down at somebody's desk with the form and saying, hey, I want you to get this. Let me show you. I mean, you're just that great with businesses.
Well, thank you, Lori. It's something that I enjoy. I've been doing this a long time, and I realize the importance that businesses do make to the community. Whether they're a firm that has 2 employees or 1,000 employees, they are invaluable. And one of the things that we did when we created this economic development organization, and understand this too, I think it's very important, we are a public-private partnership.
Okay.
We are not part of Paulding County.
So we
are not county government.
You don't work for the county
No,
government.
I don't work for the county. What I do work for is I have investors. I have a team of folks that support our organization. It's Paulding County, the City of Dallas, the City of Hiram, and the Chamber of Commerce. They are all investors in our organization, and they help us do what we need to succeed.
So they get, basically, you're almost like they are giving money to an agent. You're almost an agent.
They contract with us to work with new companies, and then when it comes to existing industry, much of that work, in fact, nearly all of it, is done in partnership with the Chamber. So Carolyn Wright and I will go out and we will meet with the businesses here in Paulding County, and we learn what their needs are, what their challenges are, what opportunities do exist for them, and then we go back and we decide who really needs to be working with them. If it's a company like we have several companies right now that are looking to add employees, to add equipment, the Opportunity Zone being a real driver in this. So I can count right now 4 existing businesses that are looking to expand now because of the zone, and we're working with them. But we figure out what they need beyond that. In one case, in order for that expansion to take place, the company had an infrastructure need, and for years that infrastructure need had not been solved.
Yeah.
Within 2 days of getting us involved, we got that infrastructure need solved. We're to move forward not only with an expansion later this year, but phase 2, which will occur in about 3 years. They're able to do that. They could not do the second phase of the expansion without that infrastructure issue, and now we've been able to address that. So that's what we do for companies.
They've almost hired an agent that focuses solely on bringing jobs to the county or helping existing companies create jobs.
Exactly.
So what do you think you're worth? I can't help it, Jamie. I mean, how many counties do this? Where the focus isn't, but this
every county does it.
Every county.
But let me tell you the challenges we've had in Paulding County. We talk about existing industry.
Right.
We talk about all those jobs or all the folks that work outside the county and our base. If you look at the amount of manufacturing jobs per resident of any of the counties in our labor market, we are dead last in terms of the jobs per people. One of the most amazing statistics that I found when I got here, Lori, when I ran these numbers, is
and these things can be found on the Economic Development website?
No,
too?
I don't have this on the website, but this is from the Georgia Department of Labor. This was from This was from 2009, and so they were using different population numbers than what we had today, but the numbers don't change. We had 901 people employed in manufacturing, and I looked at, there were 7 counties in our labor market, but I also included Floyd County in there, because the Rome
Right.
area is not on an interstate, but they've done a pretty good job of developing their community.
Yes, I've worked there. I'm aware of that.
So let's look at who's in our labor market. Cobb, Bartow, Carroll, Douglas, Polk, Harrelson, us,
Yes.
and then I throw in Floyd. That's 8 counties. We have exactly 901 manufacturing jobs. That is dead last. We are 8th out of all those counties. Let's take a look at Carroll, which is a smaller county. 6,927 manufacturing jobs. Floyd, 6,315. Even Polk,
Right.
3,204. What does that mean in terms of jobs per capita? Polk County has 1 manufacturing job for every 13 residents. Harrelson has 1 for every 16. We have 1 manufacturing job for every 151 residents. That's totally unacceptable.
I know.
And what it also
You're talking. Wait a minute. I want to stop you because you are talking about one specific market, which is manufacturing. We both know is most of the time they're paying a better living wage, and they're paying benefits. So this is huge. When we are looking at these numbers, we're saying these counties, even with some of them with smaller populations, more of their population within the county is making a higher than average wage and with benefits. So this is why we are focused on manufacturing here.
We are, and I want to point out just a couple quick follow-up points on that. Okay, in terms of manufacturing, you'll hear folks say, well, there aren't any more manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing jobs are all going to China or they're going to Mexico. Well, that was true, back in the mid '90s, late '90s, early 2000. But now we're seeing that trend of manufacturing coming back to the United States, and that's because wage rates in China are going up exponentially every year. Automation is becoming a more critical part in the manufacturing process. So when manufacturing becomes more important, you do have a drop in the labor component. But now the labor component has to be more skilled. So now you're getting better paying jobs with more skilled people, but there's less of them. So now the cost of hiring that labor when you have less and you need it to be skilled makes the United States extremely competitive right now with manufacturing. So you're starting to see those jobs come back. But I will caution everybody on this. Because equipment now is becoming a more important role in the manufacturing process, those communities that are willing to offset the property taxes on equipment have the best chance of getting those jobs. So you need to be able to provide those abatements again against the equipment.
It ties right back in.
Absolutely. So, when you look at these numbers of 1 manufacturing job per 151 residents, it shows you again, these counties all had organized economic development programs over the years. They were out recruiting. That is why they are in the position they're in, and we're not. And I'm going to wrap it up with saying one thing. If you could equate economic development to an automobile, okay? If you look at counties like Cobb, our neighbor, if you look at maybe North Gwinnett, or not North Gwinnett, North Fulton, and then you look at Gwinnett County as a whole, if they were a car, they would be a Mercedes, and they would be that Mercedes driving down the road that everybody looks at and says, wow, what a great car. I like that community. If you're a business, I want to be there, okay? Now, Paulding County is never going to be a Mercedes or a BMW. We're not a luxury car. But what we are going to be, and I'll show you the picture right here, okay? That's what I talk about. We are going to be the Toyota Camry. We're going to be a reliable, dependable, attractive car, okay, that people want, and that they know they can come here or get this car and they can ride and ride forever, and it's not going to break down on them, okay? But you'll notice here, what do I have on here? The Mercedes is actually on the road. Where's that Toyota Camry? That Toyota Camry is in the assembly plant. They're putting the transmission in, they're putting the steering in, they're putting the wheels on, and they're going to get it on the road. That's where we are in our economic development efforts. We've had to focus on land and building product. We've had to focus on putting incentives together to attract companies here, and we've had to go out and aggressively market this community to the Georgia Department of Economic Development, site location consultants, and businesses to say, we have something and we're developing something that you are going to want. We want you to be here, and we're going to show you it makes economic sense to come to Paulding County. That message has to be conveyed. So you talk about why we need an economic development program. It's for all these reasons. You cannot sit by and wait for business to come to you. It's not going to happen. Every community in this state has an economic development program, and they're funding it to help go out and recruit those businesses and to work with the existing industry to encourage them to expand, relocate, create jobs, and invest in the community. We have our saying, it's Destination Paulding, arrival time now. and that's what we're marketing. We want Paulding County to be that premier destination that businesses think of, and we want them to come here today. And our time as an economic development player in Metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia has arrived. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're seeing the interest. I've said before, if you think that there's not an interest in businesses coming to Paulding County, then you're not out there talking to businesses. All you have to do is create the right business climate, the incentives, and have product that they want. We already have the workforce. We already have the quality of life that's attractive. Now we've had to do these other things, and it's working.
And Jamie, you take the message really to the world. This is what you do. This is your job, sometimes 7 days a week. This is what you do. You take this message to the world.
Lori, I will tell you this, and it's a joke among my board members, of when they get emails and when they get phone calls from me. There's most days, if you look at my hours per week, I'm working probably about 12-hour days. I live, I breathe, I think this stuff. I'm always trying to figure out what we can do to be better and how we position ourselves. We've had some challenges because we're starting new, and the challenges is penetrating that market. And now what you're seeing, we had 2 successes last year with ADI coming in at the airport and Envelope Superstore coming into Hiram. We have commitments from several companies, existing and new, to put facilities here in Paulding, which we have not announced yet because we have to get all the paperwork and the agreements finalized. But what will happen when those projects come to Paulding is it's going to take us up to a whole new level, and it's going to make the job of selling Paulding much easier. But we've had to plan, we've had to prepare, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, you have to invest. I know this is a small business. I've had to make investments. Sometimes I've had to borrow to go forward, and we have absolutely had to do that starting at scratch. I want to let everybody know that I appreciate you taking the time to listen to Jamie. Jamie keeps all of us in the business community motivated when we go in and talk to him and the great things that he's doing for us. He's also on Facebook. You can like his Facebook page.
Let's go to the Paulding County Economic Development
and that
Facebook
too,
site.
which he press releases on the Facebook most of the time. But anything that you want to know, go to the county website. Awesome. Economic development is on there. Jamie, if you own a business, Jamie will talk to you. He answers the phone, he takes the time, and he will talk to you, and he will hold your hand to show you how you can take advantage. So if you're not asking, you're not doing everything that you can do to build your existing business here in Paulding County.
And we're not a cure-all for everything.
No.
But if we don't know, if we can't handle it, we will get those involved, whether it's the Paulding County Chamber or whether it's a state organization. We will get them involved. One of the things I didn't mention in our office, we have the Georgia Department of Labor in there 1 day a week.
Yes.
So they can assist in helping folks find jobs in terms of what they have in their database, and they work with us with existing and new companies that are going to be hiring to help do that. So we're trying to have as many resources available to our community as possible.
Well, Jamie, thanks a lot for coming on. Always love talking to you. It's always exciting.
Thanks.